in the community today. There's a really special event, but it's going to be a fun event. It's going to be lots of music and a lot of cool things going on. Talk to me, Johnny. And we've got somebody here who's going to share all that information and give you some background on what this is. Lisa Mason, right? Thanks so much for talking to me here today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the time.
You got the T-shirt and all that going on,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, we just put a big merch order in, and we're going to be selling some of this stuff on Saturday.
Yeah,
so.
Great. Well, what is Talk to Me or Talk to Me Johnny?
Yeah, so Talk to Me Johnny is a nonprofit organization that my parents and I started in 2023. Mm-hmm. In November of 2021, we lost my brother, Sergeant John Arlittle, to suicide.
Sorry.
He had done 18 years in the military and 2 tours in Afghanistan, and unfortunately his PTSD went undertreated, and it ultimately got the better of him in 2021. So. Mm-hmm.
So obviously, big heart string attachment here.
Yes.
Yeah. And what made you say, like, let's do this thing? I mean, there are a lot of services available out there for mental health, but this is kind of a little more specific. It
is. So one of the things that really sort of surprised us was just how much we didn't really know about his military life.
Right.
A lot of the individuals who serve in the military and serve our communities generally really sort of keep those two things separate. They very much compartmentalize their role within, these service activities versus their families. And so, the number of people who really showed up that we had never heard of or flew across the country for a 30-minute visitation for him, and, really just kept reaching out to us after the fact was, he was a good guy and he was well loved, but we had no idea the impact that he had on people.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten in touch with a few people in the military community who put me in touch with more people in the military community, and I got involved in All OK's 22 push-up challenge in February of 2023.
Oh, okay.
Really cool initiative that a veteran-owned apparel brand out of Ottawa does. And so it's 22 push-ups on February 22nd. You can do it once, or you can do it every hour for 12 hours. And so when I heard about it, John died on the 22nd of November. And so the number to me was very impactful that way.
Sure.
But it was actually through this challenge that I realized what 22 actually stood for. And there's a statistic out of the US in around 2011 that indicated 22 veterans take their life every day.
Every day?
Yes.
Wow.
And so, I mean, the military in the US is much bigger than the one
but
here.
Still,
but it's
still human life.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started researching sort of the number of suicides in our Canadian military, and we don't do a great job of keeping track of them, but they did start actually tracking this in 2010 after some pressures coming out of the Afghanistan war and the number of lives that we were losing to suicide. And there's very specific guardrails around who gets included in the numbers for each year. There, you have to be sort of actively serving. You can't have moved on to another, if you are a reservist, but you are also in the police force or the fire or whatever, you don't get included because you also have this other job that can lead to PTSD and things like that. So, but in the year that John passed away, and we don't know if for sure if he's included in the statistic or not, but there was 18.
Wow.
And John left behind 4 little boys, and it's just trying to explain to 4 young little boys why their dad isn't here anymore is challenging, no matter what the circumstances are. But when you bring suicide and the stigma around mental health and suicide into the conversation, it's very, very difficult to explain to children, and to put it in a way that, doesn't glorify it in any sort of way, but also doesn't make it a shameful thing for them either. So.
Wow, I'm blown away by the stats. Like, I mean, you hear of suicide, but you don't really realize, especially in that scenario, I guess, to go about our daily lives and don't think about that unless it's directly connected to you.
Well, a lot of people don't know that we've actually lost more veterans to suicide since 2010 than we did in the entire Afghanistan war.
Why is that?
I mean, we can speculate all day, but I think, one of the things and what we're really trying to accomplish is with the format of this year's event is we're just not getting to people early enough.
Right, we're not recognizing it.
That's right. And so I think, we talk about mental illness, but we don't talk about mental wellness.
Right.
And what goes into mental wellness. And so, through some of my advocacy and other things that I've been doing on social media and things, I've got quite a wonderful network around me now, and including many military individuals, but also a few police and fire and paramedics who follow me now, and we go back and forth a bit, and it's one of the things that I say to them all the time is like, why isn't this part of the training? Like, why isn't it a requirement that you are already, meeting with a psychologist or a psychotherapist or some sort of counseling, even if it's just once a year for an annual checkup.
Yeah, right.
Right? As part of the requirements. And it's just not. And I know a lot of the people that I work with, really encourage that of the younger generations coming up behind them. But it's just not something that we think about. And I think one of the ways that we can start to get there is by encouraging, people like my nephews and other children to start talking about mental wellness and what that means. And I think that will come a long way.
Kind of like, rather than we're talking about it like what's wrong with you,
exactly.
More of, I'm recognizing that there's something going on with you, and what can we do to prevent it growing into something really tragic.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that. And I mean, it's no secret that mental health is an issue and stuff. And I find too, especially in this conversation, like you say the word suicide so easily, and I think a lot of times, and I know I used to be one of those, I talk a lot about this, but it was hard to just say the word because it was almost like a swear word, or you just didn't want to talk about it. It's over there, right? And that was part of the problem, right? Have we gotten better?
I think so, but I think we still have a really long way to go. Yeah. It's interesting. We saw there was a post up on Facebook or something about new recruits needing mental wellness as part of the Canadian Armed Forces or something, and somebody had commented on it, just suck it up like we did, and deal with your mental health when you get out like the rest of us, kind of thing, right? And you think, okay, maybe, but I mean, you can kind of tell based on sometimes
it might be like, okay, like I hear you, but like you gotta push through sometimes. Like
that's
you're having
right.
a bad day at work or what, okay, but
like
then there are moments.
But that's exactly it, right? And the reality is, look, we all push through difficult things, and we just sort of have to deal with it. I lost my brother. He was 36 years old, and you know what? 2 weeks later, I had to go back to work.
Yeah.
It's life, unfortunately.
And what about the families what about you and your family? Was there any kind of support for you?
There is. The military does a reasonably good job, I would say. Thankfully, we were able to get access to, therapy and things like that. But it's not that much different than any other.
I don't pretend to understand.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. And, it's not much different than any other death, right? In the moment, everybody's there.
Yeah.
And, you've got the military coming in, you've got padres, you've got, what they call the designated assistant who, sort of is your conduit between you and the military. And I think, a military suicide, I can't speak for first responders, but a military suicide is very challenging because all of a sudden you go from civilian status to now you're dealing with the military rules.
Right.
So the obituary has to be worded in certain ways,
I see, right.
all of these different
wow.
things that have to happen. If they're going to be buried in, in uniform, they have to go and inspect it, and they have to do this, and so it gets really interesting in the way. And then one of the things, because it was a military suicide, my brother was still an active member. They do what's called a board of inquiry. And so somebody actually investigates the reason for the suicide.
Oh, wow.
And which is interesting, but it's, they start making decisions for you, like whether or not they think you need to be at these, interviews or hear, review any of the file or anything like that. So that there's this entire investigation going on for your loved one, but
you don't have any access.
And so,
and you're gonna, of course, you have questions, and
we want answers.
Why did why? That's probably still on your mind.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that will ever go away,
No.
Dave. It's just not something that I think will happen. But there's days I sit there and I'm like, okay, I can sort of understand it, and then there's other days where I'm like, why the heck did you do this to us?
Yeah.
And so. But I think,
and who knows what what Johnny saw or others in the military. I have friends been on the local police force here for years, and they've been able to share some stories with me, and it's like, wow. And you think like, Sarnia, that doesn't happen, but
it does.
And just dealing, a negative environment. You're walking into a negative. You're waking up every day. You're going out. You're likely going to see negative stuff, and just that compounded impact, I think, over time has definitely got to have a toll on anybody who's.
Well, I've seen stats, right? I think the stat is, and don't quote me, but it's around, the average person will see up to as many as about 4 real tragic incidents or scenarios in their life. Mm-hmm. But a first responder will see 4,000 in their career. And
that's crazy.
So, you start to think about some of the things that we go through. You get into a car accident or whatever, and you have to deal with those things. You lose somebody suddenly because of, something tragic. But, the first responders are the ones responding to these calls.
Yeah, well, and you think like that's their job, that's their career, they chose it, but at the same time, they're still human, and even if they don't know that person, that's still a human life, that's happened.
Could you imagine coming to something and there's
Nope.
like a small child? Like,
Nope.
I'd be done. But I think, yes, they did sign up for it, but as a community, and as a society, I think that there's 2 things that we need to try to help figure out is, 1, how do we make the conversation about mental wellness? And 2, we need to remember that, sure, they might be everyday heroes, but they are still humans.
Right. And well, most of us, good point, because most of us, when we see tragedy, we see it on a television screen, movie screen.
Yeah.
And in the back of our mind, we know it's really not real. And we can turn the TV, and even if it's on the news, we can turn the TV off and walk away and go about our lives. And we go, well, that's too bad, and away we go, right? So I can't imagine dealing with something like that, let alone, like family member that's ongoing. So I know we could talk about that for a long time. No, and I appreciate this is an important message, right? But we want to talk about this Saturday.
This Saturday, yes.
The Brigden Fairgrounds. I'm excited just for the event, but I haven't been to the Brigden Fairgrounds in a while, so I'm excited to look around and see what's going on. Besides, one of my favorite guys, Scott Manery and the Barnburners, is going to be there.
Oh yes, Scott and the guys are absolutely amazing. So they've helped us out before, so we're really looking forward to working with them again this year. And I have it on good authority that they are hopefully playing one of John's songs. John was a singer-songwriter himself.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And so they previously in the past learned one of his songs for us and played it. And
cool.
I'm told they might be doing that again this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. But the daytime event is going to be so much fun, Dave. I think that, making it about families this year and getting that conversation started at younger ages in a way that suits all levels,
Right.
was really important to us as a family. And so, starting at noon, you're welcome to come in. I think the entrance is going to be off the Brigden Road, not the usual fair entrance, because
Okay.
we're not that big.
Right. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Not this year. And Cornerstone's going to be playing for us for a couple
nice.
of hours. And we've got some food Truckin' Mamas is going to be out there, and
yummy.
an ice cream shop, and a couple of other things. And then we've got representatives from OPP, St. Clair Fire, and
is that
Lambton EMS all going to be out there with trucks and gear and lots of things to show the kids. And we've got some of the paramedic students from Lambton College are coming out, and they're going to teach kids how to put Band-Aids on teddy bears and listen to their heartbeats and
Awesome.
all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a memorial event for first responders and military without some sort of challenge. So during the day, we've got an inflatable obstacle course for the kids to try out.
Okay, cool.
And then starting at 3, we've got 4 teams squaring off on a relay style obstacle course.
Nice.
That will be a little bit funny, hopefully not offensive, but a little funny.
Okay, whatever. We're just doing it.
And but it will, sort of indicate what actually happens for each of these different organizations in terms of skill level and requirements as far as physicality, and
Right.
maybe what society thinks they do.
I get you. I've been to some fit challenges and stuff, and you go, wow, and you just didn't move that like an inch. You did that like 100 feet. But anyway, yeah. So something like that.
Something, yeah.
Okay,
So
all right.
it's
So you got to come out.
That's right. You got to
find
come out
where-
and see.
Right,
And then we've got a vendor market that's going to be there. So as I said, we'll be out there selling our gear, and we've got a few others doing the same, and then some mental health support. So really an opportunity for the community to learn what's out there in terms of
Conversations.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we get it all started in a way that is also child friendly.
It's great that you've got the OPP and the fire there, because they're obviously directly affected by it too. So they bring in their communities to this, and then this is going to grow, right?
That's the
At least
hope.
that's the hope.
That
for
is
sure,
the hope.
right?
Yes.
So the way we do that is we get people out there to come and have this experience. Is there a cost to come in?
No cost to come in.
Just come on
it's
out.
free. Come on out. Get the kids face painted. Let them snuggle with a few bunnies and a miniature horse at the petting zoo, and they have
okay.
full range of the grounds while we sort of run around and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, the music. Once again, Cornerstone will be there, and of course, Scott Manery and the Barnburners. My favorite one. I like the Railroad Man. That's one of my
yes.
favorite, and they know that. So, anything else you want to add in before we go?
So we are doing a dinner and dance. The dinner and dance starts at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Dinner tickets are now closed,
Okay.
but you can come out to the dance starting at 8 o'clock and pay at the door. So.
Okay, great. Lisa, thank you so much
Thank
for
you, Dave.
sharing
Really
the story.
appreciate
It's
it.
really important. Talk to me, Johnny. There's a reason we're talking here to you today, and that's to get you out to the Brigden Fairgrounds. I'm going to put some more information in the comments below, and we want to get this thing growing and growing, not just for Johnny, but for so many others that are affected by suicide, and we want to get that mental health awareness out there and growing. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, I'm David Burrows, and this has been another Community Matters.